Now I'd like to introduce Anabel Pelham, our guest for the morning. Anabel is Professor Emerita, San Francisco State University, Founding Director, San Francisco State University Gerontology Graduate Program, Executive Director of the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, and President of the National Association for Professional Gerontologists. Please join me in welcoming Anabel this morning. Anabel, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Please tell us about lessons learned from taxi driver and Eleanor Rigby, isolation, loneliness, and risk to civil society and democracy.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be your guest. Thank you very much indeed. Well, gerontologists have known about the risks and dangers of isolation and loneliness for a long time. These conditions have now entered our everyday social lives. I think they were highlighted because of COVID. So isolation is a slow social death, and loneliness is a slow emotional death. And in many ways, older adults, seniors, elders are canaries in the coal mine when it comes to social problems. And so we've known about this for a long time, but now it seems to have this condition has seemed to have penetrated and emerged in larger society. So the Surgeon General, if you haven't seen it already, has published just an excellent booklet, I guess. It's a fairly good size. I urge you to download it. It's free. A lot of what I'm talking about comes from the science, the research, the data, the evidence that's in that document. So social isolation and loneliness are related, but they're not the same. So social isolation is objectively having few social relationships, social roles, group memberships, and infrequent social interaction. Loneliness is a subjective internal state. It's the distressing experience that results from perceived isolation or unmet need between an individual preferred actual experience, so what they hope for, what they would like to have, and what's actually happening in their life. So the lack of social connection poses a significant risk for individual health and longevity, and this is what's new. Loneliness and social isolation increase the risk of premature death by 26 and 29% respectively. In other words, it's deadly. In addition, poor or insufficient social connection is associated with increased risk of disease, including a 29% increase of the risk of heart disease, a 32% increase in the risk of stroke. Furthermore, it's associated with increased risk for anxiety and depression and dementia. So we knew about the clinical risk factors for dementia, including hearing loss, but this is relatively new in the literature. Additionally, the lack of social connection may increase susceptibility to viruses and respiratory illnesses. The lack of social connection can have a significant economic impact and a cost to individuals, communities, and societies, and that's where we need to really pay attention. So social isolation among older adults alone accounts for an estimated 6.7 billion with a B in excess Medicare spending, and this is annual, largely due to increased hospital and nursing home spending. Moreover, beyond direct healthcare spending, loneliness and isolation are associated with lower academic achievement, worse performance at work. In the US, stress-related absenteeism attributed to social connection not only affecting individuals, but communities and places of work. And it looks like it's costing somewhere around 154 billion with a B annually. So the impact of social connection not only affects individuals, but it also impacts our communities. It impacts community well-being. So it impacts population health, prosperity, And indeed, we're finding representative government. So heavy topic to think about. So social connections are a basic human need. Our brains have adapted to expect proximity to others. Our distant ancestors relied on others to help them meet their basic needs. Living in isolation or outside of the group means having to fill many difficult demands for survival by yourself. This requires far more effort and reduces your chances of survival. Despite current advancement, still allow us to live without engaging with others, for example, food delivery, automation, remote communication, and all that. Our biological need to connect with each other remains, and that's in person, face to face, across the table, in the room. I tell my colleagues and my students, I know we drive each other crazy, but we have to find a way to be together. So in light of mounting evidence, it's becoming clear that the social impacts of isolation and loneliness are a critical public health concern. And I think we need to emphasize public health concern. There's mounting evidence that millions of Americans lack adequate social connection in more than one way. A study in 2022 found that when people were asked how close they felt to others emotionally, only 39% of adults in the US said that they felt very connected to others. That's a scary number. Recent surveys find that about 50% of US adults report experiencing loneliness. Some of the highest rates are among young adults. So social connection exists on a continuum, so we need to understand that. It changes over time, and it's subjective and difficult to measure. So here are some trends. Social networks are getting smaller. Close friendships are declining. Family size and marriage rates have been declining for decades. And memberships in organizations have also been declining. Today, about 47% of people say they belong to a faith community. So what are the highest rates of social disconnection? So the highest prevalence for loneliness and isolation among people with poor physical or mental health, disabilities, financial insecurity, those who live alone, single parents, as well as younger and older populations. For example, while the highest rates of social isolation are found among older adults, young adults are twice as likely to report feeling lonely than those over age 65. So the rate of loneliness among young adults has increased every year between 1976 and 2019, and it got really worse during the times of COVID. In addition, lower income adults are more likely to be lonely than those with higher incomes. 63% of adults who earn less than $50,000 a year report being lonely, which is 10 percentage points higher than those who earn more than $50,000 a year. Additional at-risk groups may include individuals from ethnic and racial minority groups, LGBTQ individuals, rural residents, victims of domestic violence, and those who experience discrimination or marginalization. So we really have to kind of worry about what I call, or what's being called in the literature, the rabbit hole of isolation and loneliness, where people actually descend into a space where their minds and their behavior begins to change. And that's why the title of this talk. So there are some recent books I can suggest that we take a look at, that I have read through, that I think are valuable, that they come from different perspectives, but I think they're useful. They talk about social isolation and declining civic engagement. So the first, and I could share these with Kim, but I'll just mention them so he can share with you all. The weaponization of loneliness, how tyrants stoke our fear of isolation to silence, divide, and conquer. And that's by Stella Mortabito. Again, we can make this list available. I'm working my way through that one right now. The second book I could suggest is The Double Weaponization of Loneliness by Robert Berkowitz. And then number 3, Bowling Alone, which is it's been around a long time, by Robert Putnam. And then the latest one is The Weaponization of Loneliness by Hillary Rodham Clinton. And here's what she says when we talk about civic engagement. There's a reason for concern. The influence of dark money and corporate power, right-wing propaganda and misinformation, malign foreign interference in our elections, which is significant, and the vociferous backlash against social progress and anti-intellectualism. I experienced that personally yesterday when I got a very nasty phone call from an individual who didn't like an article that appeared in a San Mateo newspaper about the age-friendly cities work we're doing in San Mateo County. I haven't decided if I'm going to respond to it or not, but I'm here to tell you it's out there and it's real. So what does all this loneliness and disconnection mean for democracy? Well, the Surgeon General connects the dots between increasing social isolation and declining civic engagement. And I think that's an important connection for us to make. When we are less invested in one another, we're more susceptible to polarization and less able to pull together to face the challenges that we cannot solve alone. And this was an article that he wrote, and it was published in the New York Times recently. And it's not just the Surgeon General who recognizes the social isolation, it saps the lifeblood of democracy. So ultra right-wing billionaires, propagandists, provocateurs, international meddlers, I guess, who see authoritarianism as a source of power and profit, something to worry about. Authoritarianism is emerging. Autocracies are emerging, not just in small groups around the US, but internationally. I was visiting Eastern Europe lately, and I spent a lot of time talking to members of my group from Hungary, and they're terrified and suffering. The situation there is grim. So here's what Clinton worries about. I'm using her words. She said, "I'm worried about armies of disconnected, alienated, and angry young men. I'm worried about the online ties and propaganda, lies and propaganda from around the world. I'm worried about true believers in conspiracies getting elected to public office who have absorbed lies and propaganda. I'm worried about book burners, and I'm worried about groups that harass and threaten others like I was yesterday. I wouldn't call it threatened, but I would definitely call it a harassing phone call." First time that's happened to me in a long time. So here, what are the benefits then? Let's try to look at the positive side, what we can do. The benefits of connected communities, and this is chapter 4 in the Surgeon General's book that we can take a closer look at. Population health, investing in social capital, volunteering, getting people immunized against pandemics, and have creating buffers for hazards in a community, like emergency preparedness, encouraging people to vote, and get involved in various organizations like this one, trying to build community cohesion. Natural hazard preparation and helping people learn how to be resilient. Teaching people about community safety. The anti-fraud program was a good example of that. Trying to promote economic prosperity across the population. Encouraging civic engagement and representative government, and teaching people about democracy and the importance of democracy and becoming involved in that. The reality is that many communities are struggling to keep up and adapt to accelerated social change. I mean, that's one of the drivers of isolation and loneliness. People are struggling to keep up with technology and social change. Oftentimes, industry has moved out of a community, leaving a downtown that's dying or dead, and with a flight to the suburbs. That's why it's really important for us to invest in our communities, especially our downtowns, and make them vibrant and vital, like this organization is working on. And there's some work currently being done around trying to get the concept of blue zones, not only in our diet, but in our community. So Kim, those are my remarks, and I'm happy to entertain and discuss any questions that you may have, or others, as best I can.
Great. Thank you very much, Anabel. I think there's a slide that Joe's going to put up now that covers some of this from the Surgeon General's office, just to give everybody a chance to look at that briefly, see the things that sort of structure as 6 pillars to advance social connection that we might think about. Okay, thank you, Joe. Well, again, Anabel, thank you for the very informative presentation. I have a few questions for you before we open it up for others to ask. First, how can age-friendly cities help with isolation and loneliness?
Yeah, the good news about age-friendly cities is that they're evidence-based. They're data-based. The World Health Organization did a tremendous amount of international research trying to find out, what are the domains that we can study and lift up in a city. And although it was designed to promote the well-being of older people, it turns out it's helping all of us, intergenerational. And so what WHO looks at, and what we study in CAFE when we're trying to understand the needs of a community, is we look at outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, and community support and health services. You'll notice those first 4 are more structural, and the last ones are more interactional. So just understanding that these are domains that make a community healthy, vibrant, and vital is important, because if we do research and find out what is needed in those domains, we can improve them. We can work on projects and programs. We can target our budgets. We can inform our leadership in our communities. This is where we need to put resources. So that's how age-friendly cities literally studies and informs and lifts up communities.
Thank you. And what are some of the most easy economical things communities can do to promote connection?
Right. Well, there are small sort of low-hanging fruit things communities can do, and larger structural things. But we've been studying this for a while, and I can give you some examples. Libraries are just huge resources for every community. A couple of things that I like about that is libraries now are offering opportunities where you can check out a person and actually sit somewhere and have a coffee together and get acquainted and learn who they are and what they do. And the idea is to check out a person who doesn't look like you or comes from a community like you, and have an opportunity to engage with another world. Simple things. When we put in benches, instead of having them face out, make them in a semicircle or a circle, so benches can be such that people can look at each other and say hello and then engage. An opportunity for visiting and chatting. I want to sing the praises of Club 55 in Los Altos. I think that's a brilliant project. So important. And I love what I hear about how people appreciate and enjoy Club 55. There's another project I know about where the library project has developed, where they have now little cubicles where library staff help older people with their telemedicine appointments when they can't figure it out and they don't have the technology to have a telemedicine appointment. There are libraries now in the Bay Area that are making opportunities available so elder people can come in and do their telemedicine appointments. Large family style tables at restaurants where you can all sit together and get acquainted. Shared housing complexes for seniors and young professionals. There's a group called Embassy Networks Worldwide that literally does this. They connect older people and young people in housing. There's something called Co-Abode that matches single mothers for shared co-housing. There was a sweet little project recently here in Bend where Donner Flowers was standing in front of the library and they were handing out 2 bouquets and they were giving 2 to everyone. And they said, you keep one and find a stranger, introduce yourself and give it to them. So people were running around the city giving bouquets to strangers. It was lovely. It was magical. And that happened on October 20th. And I saw it happening outside our library. Lending libraries for medical equipment and yard and kitchen tools can get people together so they don't have to buy, each person has to buy a brand new whatever. Repair cafes staffed by older persons or anyone that knows how to fix something is very useful. Tech help sessions. We've done this in Los Altos of young people helping older people with their technology needs. And the United Kingdom offers a packet now where they'll send to anyone about how to host something they call a big lunch, where you host for a group of strangers or community members can come together and have lunch together. We did this during COVID. We did this in the hallway here with my neighbors. We all dragged our chairs and trays outside in the hallway, and we all had lunch together during the lockdowns of COVID. And it built a lovely community in my condominium complex.
Thank you for the great and inspiring ideas, Anabel. Club 55 may look at trying to promote some of those further. Who's most lonely in our society?
Yeah, well, there are 2 groups. Our young adults are reporting a lot of loneliness. There are many reasons for this. Social media is emerging, it looks like, as a real problematic issue in society. In the other group, the reports significant loneliness are older people. So it's our young people and our older adults, elders, who are reporting significant loneliness. Young people tend to report it more, and the in fact part seems to be happening to our older adult population.
Great. Who or what is one of the most creative helpers against isolation and loneliness?
Well, there's a lot going on out there. I think communities are waking up to this and saying, wow, we can't just assume people are going to find each other. We've got to create ways for people to get together. We actually have to intervene and do something. But I kind of liked the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence in San Francisco. It's a fun group. But not only do they dress up and go to parades, but they have a huge back office activity of supporting behind the scenes and in a very gentle way the LGBTQ population, especially the young people who are searching and struggling and finding themselves isolated, lonely, and dismissed by their families. I just thought that was such a creative, cheerful, positive way to reach out to the community.
Thank you. I read that the number of people in California over 65 will double in the 20-year period from 2010 to 2030, from 4.3 million in 2010 to 8.4 in 2030. What do you feel these demographic trends tell us about what we should expect in the near 10 to 20-year future, and how should we be preparing for that?
Right. Well, I think all of us can assume around 20% of any population are going to be older adults. That's kind of a number. It varies, here and there. But 1/5 of our population are older adults. And also it's a very diverse population. It's becoming more diverse. And it's important to understand that diversity. It's also important to understand that we're living longer, and it's not just in the United States, but it's globally. A baby born today can probably expect to live to 120. And that's not illusion. That's looking like fact right now. So we need to understand that the population globally and in our communities is aging, living longer, and a lot more diverse. So I think we need to look to what is the expertise, what is the knowledge, what do we know about how to create communities that are age friendly for this population. And remember, it's intergenerational. Anything that we do that's age friendly supports everyone. You just look at infrastructure, look at projects and programs, and all of us benefit by making our communities more age friendly.
Great. And what do you see that gives you hope about addressing all this isolation and loneliness and the threats to our society and democracy?
Well, I really appreciate the work that the Surgeon General is doing. And I think defining it and shining a spotlight on it as a public health emergency, that's what he's calling it now, a public health emergency, can help us focus our attention on projects and programs and things we can do collectively to address isolation and loneliness. One of the things that he wrote about in the Times and the New York Times is he went to the Juilliard School, and he asked them to help the Surgeon General's office and public health come up with creative ideas in the arts and the humanities for addressing isolation and loneliness. In other words, it was a marriage of public health, arts, and humanities. What can we do? How can we engage and reach out and embrace communities using art and humanities? I just thought that was inspired. And so, individuals from those disciplines, those areas of creativity can begin to help all of us look at this issue and have some impact.
Great, thank you. Before we switch over to the audience Q&A, Anabel, any closing thoughts or remarks?
Well, thank you for putting a spotlight on this issue. I mean, it kind of starts out negatively, I understand. Social problems are like that. But, I'm a militant optimist. I really believe that if we work together, if we help each other, we can lift up our communities, engage our communities, and really have an impact. And it starts with each and every one of us. And I know many of you here, have a long history of service and dedicated concern and love for the community. And so I think, if we can bring that passion and energy to our communities, we can begin to address this issue and have an impact on it.
Thank you. I like that militant optimist. I sometimes refer to myself as a pathological optimist.
Yeah, I know. I understand. I do.
Well, we're going to open it up now for questions. Please raise your hand, your virtual hand, if you have a question you'd like to ask. And please limit yourself to one question until everybody else has gotten a chance to ask their question. And again, please do not give commentary or a speech before asking your question. Mark, you have your hand up. What's your question?
Yeah, well, thank you, Anabel. Really great to hear you again. But my question is, how do we get to a lot of these kind of forums tend to be, singing to the choir. How do we get to the people who are not engaged, who could really contribute? I've been part of a lot of volunteer and nonprofits that could really use more people involved in helping, and it's a lot of fun and you get engaged. But how do we find or get to people who are isolated?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things to do. I think it's militant optimism. You just relentless engagement. You just never stop. You never give up. Forums like this. I'm running all over the place, talking the Oregon, Bend, this area. I'll be in Los Altos in mid-November. And every public forum, every organization, every place you go, you talk about it. You try to engage people, get the word out. And just each and every one of us doing our small parts in our circles, of engaging, informing, enlightening, supporting. That's all we can do. I mean, there are some projects being done, trying to reach out. There's a project called SIP, SIPP, that the Los Altos Community Foundation helps to support, that we work with, that reaches out to older adults, to seniors who may be isolated and lonely, and engage them. I can send you Marguerite DeLange's contact information. She works on that in Los Altos. But there are projects like this all over. Age-friendly cities. I really think that's a key. Working in these 8 domains and trying to lift each one of them up in a variety of ways is important. It works.
Great. Thank you. Other questions? Anybody have a question? Please raise your hand. It looks like you anticipated everybody's question, Anabel. Oh, there we have one. Malka.
Hi, Anabel, that was great. I really love what you said. My question is it kind of about the connections between people? Have you seen any research, or do you have an opinion about kind of whether connections across difference, you mentioned intergenerational, et cetera, are more important than connections between people who are like each other?
Oh no, diversity is really important. Economic diversity, connections. That's why checking the person out in the library is such a good idea. It's important for it. That's why travel is important, so people can meet people from other cultures and communities,
Great. Does anybody else have a question? Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty obvious. But I was just thinking about the online and the social media type of, on the negative side of things. I too am an optimist, but on the negative side of things about the social media and the what can be done, or do you know of anything that's really, I think for us in this area here, that might be particularly relevant? What's being done to address some of the bullying?
Not a lot. I don't see a lot. I think college students are starting to understand the risks, and they're communicating with each other about this. And there are some health promotion activities going on that talk about taking a media break and a social media break for a weekend, to give yourself a timeout from that kind of thing. And I think college age people see that and understand that. But I'm worried about the younger people, the teens, the young teens, who are finding themselves just addicted to this. And it's very difficult to have an impact and to penetrate that addiction. I think public health is understanding the risk now. And I think I'm looking forward to interventions, in ways that this can be addressed in a meaningful way. I think awareness, just being aware, is a huge benefit. It really is, that we understand, oh my goodness, and it's hard to conceptualize how social media can be so damaging. But I think we're starting to grasp and understand that it is.
Thank you. David, you have your hand up.
Yes, Annabelle, is there, in all the research you've done, are there any ongoing studies of how groups that are how young adults and elders that are isolated and lonely, programs or methods, ways that they can connect, that we could share, that LACC could maybe share to our member organizations?
Yes, if you go to the CAFE website, Center for Age-Friendly Excellence website, we list all the cities that we've worked with, and we list projects and programs that have been implemented in those cities that we have helped to develop, and there's just a wealth of ideas there. So you can take a look at that. We're going January 1st, we're going to start working with the city of Los Altos on their age-friendly action plan. So stay tuned. That's going to be emerging starting January 1st, 2024. CAFE will start working with Los Altos on their action plan for engagement, age-friendly cities engagement projects and programs. Again, low-hanging fruit, free, easy things to do, but also things that might require some investment.
That's great. Thanks very much. I will go to the CAFE website myself.
Yeah, sure. Check them out. Lots of really fun and interesting projects there. Yeah.
Thanks, Annabelle.
Sure.
Great, and glad to hear you'll be back down here more starting January 1st to help advance the city of Los Altos. I know it was one of the first cities you worked with that was certified as an age-friendly city.
It was literally the first in California, literally #1.
Great. Gary, you have your hand up. Gary? You may be muted, Gary.
I was indeed. Thank you. Hi, Annabelle.
Hello.
The schools are, of course, a logical place to get to the younger generation and take on that issue of social isolation and such. Yesterday, I planted a tree with 4 third-grade students at Loyola School, and they had earned money when they were in the 2nd grade as a school project to fund a special project, something that they wanted to do, which was plant a tree. And so with Greentown, we were happy to oblige yesterday. That's the kind of thing schools can do. They can get kids involved in really interesting ways. And they had the whole school, I believe they had the whole school doing it, all grade levels, but this was this particular class. So are you aware of other things that the schools are doing?
I would need to go look at that website and refresh my memory about intergenerational programming. But I know there's a lot going on now, as public health professionals are bringing this to the attention of schools. It's really difficult to manage social media, but I think if we can create competition for social media, things that exist outside of the classroom, for example, and again, intergenerational, bringing diverse groups together is all to the good. Gary, I'd have to look it up and find projects and programs that are being done in schools to address isolation and loneliness. The kids, our young people have the advantage of school. I mean, that's a huge advantage. They go to a place and they are together. What I worry about is the people who don't necessarily have a place to go to every day, that's or even periodically, and that's why Club 55 in Los Altos is really important. Oftentimes when people retire, they are disengaged then from a workplace, colleagues, a routine, a pattern, and unless they're involved in a variety of other activities, older adults can get isolated really fast.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, that's what got me going. I retired and started working at the museum in Greentown, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Yeah, we want to reach out and find ways to encourage people who haven't had an opportunity to do that yet.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Maria, I thought I saw you might have a question. Do you want to go ahead?
Probably helps if I unmute first,
Yes.
huh?
Yeah.
So, Annabelle, are you considering Zoom as part of social media? For example, I don't think we would be having this session today with you if it weren't for Zoom. And it's been kind of a lifesaver during the pandemic, which
Yeah.
hope will be
No,
over.
no, I don't consider Zoom social media as Zoom as technology that allows us to connect with others. And I think it's vital, it's essential, it's important. It makes these kind of connections possible, and they wouldn't be otherwise. There are different forms of social media that our young people are involved in particular, that I think are problematic. A little bit, it's like everything else, moderation. But people get sucked into these, to these protocols, and these targeted kind of communications. And then people really can go down a rabbit hole, especially when it comes to things like games, online gaming and, that sort of thing. People can really get lost very quickly. Our young people who don't have the tools yet, and their minds are still developing. Their brains are still growing, and I think that's the risk that the Surgeon General and other health professionals are concerned about. So I think if we can create competition, the social media alternatives that are fun and in the community where people can get involved, that would be vital. That would be important, and make them intergenerational whenever we can, and diverse whenever we can.
Thank you. Gary, your hand's up again. Great.
Hello, I unmuted myself this time. Just wanted to let you know about something that is happening tomorrow. There's a volunteer fair. So a lot of different groups are getting together. It'll be downtown. That's put on by the Community Foundation. And this is the kind of thing that groups and communities can do. All of the organizations in town that need volunteers will be there, and it'll be a wonderful resource. We need more of that and get the word out. It may be even better. Maybe is it posted on Nextdoor? That's a good one way to get the word out.
Yep. I think that's was it like 10 to 4, 10:30 to 4, or 1 rather at the State Street Market. So that's a good point, Gary.
Yeah, 10:30 to 1.
Yep. Anybody else with a question? Okay, I want to make a bit of an observation here. The community, this coalition originally began in 2015 with a mission of educating the community of value of having a downtown vision plan. And that we had a series of in-person sessions at the library with folks who could educate us about how you get a plan, the value of having one. And finally, in August, I believe, of 2018, the City Council actually adopted the Downtown Vision Plan after a great amount of study. Like most plans, it's been slow in implementation, but there have been some things adopted which have been very helpful to the community. And I think right now we're at a very interesting point, an inflection point in the community, because the city has adopted a housing element that it's advancing very rapidly, that I believe can really act as an accelerant to adoption or implementation of the Downtown Vision Plan. And it seems to me, based on what I've been hearing this morning from you, Anabel, that may create a great opportunity because I know the city is looking at creating more public spaces. There's going to be more housing downtown, more people more opportunities to get together. And so I'd really encourage each of you and your organizations and us as a group to be thinking about what we can do to help educate people about how best to take advantage of that opportunity of having an accelerant of the vision plan implementation, and what kinds of benches we want, what kinds of public spaces we want, what kinds of public housing or housing we might want that are allow for connection rather than isolation, that sort of thing. So anyway, just a comment there on what I see coming up downtown. A friend of mine once said, change is slow unless it's fast. And I think we're in a fast period now. So fasten your seatbelts or unstrap them and get ready to really engage in some interesting times. Any other questions anybody has before we wrap up here? Not seeing any hands. I'll make a few announcements. Our next meeting is Friday, November 17, 8:30, 9:30. Please join us for a discussion entitled Mental Health Needs in LASD with Aaron Green, Director of Student and Staff Services, and Claire Griffin, Coordinator of Student and Staff Services. A topic I think that very relevant and connected to what we've been talking about here today. If you would like to be added to the coalition mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. I think that email has just been posted in chat for your convenience. And a big thank you to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing the coalition with financial and in-kind support. So again, thank you, Anabel, so much for joining us for this great discussion, informative discussion today. Look forward to seeing you all in a few weeks for our next program, and hopefully we'll get to see you, Anabel, when you're back here helping Los Altos advance its age-friendly city programming. So thank you all, and let me see, we're actually ending a few minutes early today, so we'll cede the remaining time back to you, and you can return to your normal programming. Great to see you all. Thanks.